Okay, so it's quite hot in the greenhouse normally, so I'm going to talk a little bit out here before we go in. I'm excited to be able to take y'all into our greenhouse. Normally we don't get to do this because this is a limited access facility. We normally use the double doors. We wash our hands with the alcohol before going in, but we're done for the season. We only held this, like I said, for today. After today, we're going to clean these greenhouses out. They would have been cleaned out about 2 weeks ago after our last planting. But these greenhouses, every year we start our plants in October, late October, so we're going to get the plants in about a month and a half. Those plants, I always find this to be a very fascinating process. Those plants have been being created in Baton Rouge since the spring. So it's 2025 right now. We'll get those plants this fall. Next spring, we'll have propagated them out. We'll sell some of those directly to farmers, and then we'll plant the rest here on the station. What we plant on the station, we'll harvest next year, next fall in 2026, about this time. We'll store those until the spring of 2027. 2027, those sweet potatoes will make their way to our farmers. They'll bed those as their first generation foundation seed on their farms. They'll harvest those. Most farmers are going to keep all of that seed. So spring of 2028, they'll bed that out again. They will plant that, the harvest it that fall, and usually in the spring of 2029, so by the spring of 2029, those potatoes will first start seeing the shelves. They'll also hold some of that crop back, do one more generation, and so some of the spring of 2030, the potatoes will see the shelves also. So it's a 4 to 5 year process from the time we start them in the laboratory in Baton Rouge to the time they get to the table at a restaurant. I just think that is it scares me to death because I'm always terrified one of these greenhouses is going to get hit by a tornado, which you can ask Dr. Smith does happen. But like I said, it's a very intricate process, and we're thankful to be able to provide that service to our farmers. So, as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of greenhouse sales now as well. Our industry's been shifting. Starting back in 2015, we became part of the National Clean Plant Network, so almost a decade ago. That's allowed us to have some federal funding to help support these greenhouses and the mission that we do. And what that is that allows, along with other crops, we provide this clean material to Louisiana growers as well as surrounding states. So what I'm going to do now is I'll take y'all in and show y'all some of the material, some of the stuff we have. Everything is planted on flat tables, 1.5 inch spacings. Like I said, normally we would wash our hands. All the fertilizers in the greenhouse, we just use a general Miracle Grow. I get asked, I've tried a bunch of other things. There's probably some other things that are close enough that might give you a little bit of yield bump, but it's easy for me to talk to my growers and tell them just grab this. So we program everything to make it really easy, really simple, and this stuff dissolves really well. They've got a lot of market team to allow them to know how to make this stuff dissolve in water. So we run one of 3 fertilizers. We either do this Grows Bigger, which is a high nitrogen fertilizer. We might use a Tomato Special or the Flower Food, which have a higher P and K if we're wanting to slow the plants down a little bit, depending on the time of the year. Like I said, we get these plants in October, so a lot of times we don't want the plants during Christmas to grow and come back and have them overgrown, but we want them to be healthy, so we'll drop the nitrogen down and raise the P and K. Same thing if we're getting ready to go to the field and we need to hold plants that are ready for field size for a little bit longer, we'll try to use a little bit more P and K than nitrogen. Now, as I said, these plants have been growing since last October. They're tired, they're played out, but they're still here for y'all to see for today. So every year we have our major 6 varieties. This is Bayou Belle. We have a Voiles, which is our newest variety, Evangeline, B14, B63, Orleans in the middle. On our side benches, we have what are a lot of our heirloom varieties and specialty varieties, Mirasaki. We have some numbered lines, 21260, 21156. These are purple skin, white flesh varieties. We have some other purple flesh varieties, O. Henry, Bonita, a lot of more specialized varieties that some of our industry is interested in. In the next greenhouse, we would duplicate this same center 6 table pattern. We want to make sure we're consistent with everything, although some of our side benches would hold a lot more of our breeding lines. We normally maintain about 200 lines here at the station each year. But the main focus is going to be on these 6 major lines. So every year, this 6 by 4 foot section holds 1,500 plants. We'll get about 1,500 of each of these varieties in, fill up one of these sections in October, and then we cut and transplant for the rest of the season. And I just set my little snippers down. We use these little disposable, these are upholstery snips. They work really well. When we're cutting to go in the greenhouse, we want our plants to be about this size. This is the perfect size greenhouse plant. This is what we sell around the the state, into surrounding states. We will bundle these in bundles of 25. We send them to our growers, and then they can immediately plant them into their tables. Now this is way too small to go to the field, but we want a nice multi-node plant to put into a greenhouse table so it has plenty of room to root, to establish, and then we don't want them to get overly leggy, and I can show you an example of that. The table behind you, the Evangeline, it is ready to go to the field. We were done planting Evangeline, so we just haven't gotten to it. This is the size plants we would normally go to the field, and if you notice, they're all standing up nice and straight. Sweet potato typically will grow a prostate vine if it's allowed to. We keep the spacing, like I said, on 1.5 inches, very tight, to help force these plants to grow nice and tall, just like you would in a bed situation. So very nice plants. I mean, you have to baby them a little bit. And what we end up doing is we'll take them, we'll cut them, we'll hold them for 2 to 4 days before we put them in the field. Kind of helps dry them down, hardens them off. Then we get a fairly nice establishment. And with these very nodey plants, we can get upwards of 500 to 600 bushels of production directly out of the greenhouse, as long as we take care of our plants when we're planting them. So like I said, I'm going to give you an example.
Bushels to 100 weight.
It's double. So if we're talking about 600 bushels, then you're talking about 300 hundredweight. Okay. So our growers, or our crew rather, will come in, they'll poke their holes, we'll have our cut vine, we push it down into, like I said, this is a little too big, so we'll actually probably discard this, set it to the side. We may use it, but we want to keep this intact plant, growing point. We'll shove it into the ground, pack it in tightly. That's a very, very key part of this. If you leave that aerial space, the roots have trouble establishing, the plants will dry out, you'll get a lot more death. We try to minimize death throughout the year in our plants. One of these tables, like I said, this holds 1,500 plants. One table holds around 10,000 plants. When we go to cut it for the field, we can assume we're going to get about 60% of that in field-ready plants. So that 10,000 plant table, we can go to the field with 6,000 plants. If we have 2 of those, that's 12,000 plants. That's right at an acre. An acre is 13,083 plants on a 1-foot spacing on a 40-inch row. So other than that, here in the greenhouse, like I said, everything is watered 3 times a day, automated system. Our fertilizer is injected. We slow dose our fertilizer. We put about 3 pounds of Miracle-Gro out to this 30,000 square foot greenhouse. Our water is going to we're also watering the alleys, because in order to get a nice uniform coverage, you have to water all the open space as well. So we figure our fertilizer on the total greenhouse space, not the table space. Each of our drops can be turned off, so as we progress, we can turn the drops on and only water where we have plants. And like I said, the goal is to put 3 pounds of fertilizer out per week, as slow as possible. But if it goes out, if we put it out in 5 days versus 7 days, it's not a big deal. What we used to do was we would come in every 2 weeks, we put a hot shot of fertilizer on them. What that would do is the plants would look deficient by the time you fertilize them. Then you would come in and fertilize them, you would burn them. Then you would get this rapid growth. Because when you add a lot of nitrogen, plants tend to bolt and you get a lot of elongation, versus this slow dose makes them grow nice and evenly. These plants were cut about 10 days ago. In another week and a half, they would be ready to go to the field again. Now, they're not going to the field because we're done, but they would be ready to go to the field again in another week and a half. As I said, these plants have been growing since October. So if I dug under here, I would assume we have what's labeled in the, in the book as mini roots, and that's a Bayou Bell sweet potato, little mini sweet potato root. They're not massive just because they've been fed fertilizer all year, and part of the signaling to swell roots is a deficiency in the nutrients around it. So as long as we keep pumping them full of stuff, they're not going to grow massive roots in this greenhouse table. But we just changed the Louisiana sweet potato standards for seed production. These used to be labeled as a type of seed. Now, because no one is keeping them, these are just discarded every year. And we'll discard this, turn it into compost. We don't reuse any of this soil. After we are done this week, we'll take all the soil out. We'll remove all the ground cloth, spray everything down with Clorox, put fresh ground cloth in. We'll put fresh soil in for the coming season. We'll get new plants that come directly from the laboratory in Baton Rouge. And like I said, this will all start over in about 7 weeks. So any questions on why we're in here?
So when you get plants from Baton Rouge, it'll be enough to fill a table by to fill one of these squares. Yeah. This is 1,500 plants. We'll get enough to fill 1,500 plants here, and then we will start propagating that. And we sell, I want to say last year we probably sold Our end goal here at the station is we're going to have about 300,000 plants for us, but we probably also sold about 175,000 plants to growers last year. But we did that, and we do that in January, February, and March so that they can propagate out in their own greenhouses. And we did a little bit of direct to field cutting also. So like a table like this, we would box up and take directly to a grower, and they can plant that. And what that does for them is then they can harvest that. And instead of buying that generation 1 seed from us that they're going to grow out, they're buying they can grow their own generation 1 seed and be a year ahead, and it just gives them a little bit more control over their production cycle. We have a lot of options. Like I said, all of this was also planted in our field. We also propagated our plants in our field to multiply out to have more. We'll try to provide 300 to 400 20 bushel bins of seed to growers this year, which a bin's 1,000 pounds. So 300,000 to 400,000 pounds of seed will hopefully go out to our growers this year. That's mainly in-state. And like I said, a lot of these plants were also sold multi-state. So
you have 2 paths for propagation by the sounds of it.
We do, and like I said, that's been the
stem cutting, and it's the root multiplication.
So the NCPN component, like I was telling you that we began 10 years ago, that is just in here. It doesn't go past the greenhouse. When they are shipped from here to the growers who are going to grow their own greenhouses, that's what the NCPN component is looking at. The Foundation Seed Program has existed for 75 years here at the research station. We did that long beforehand. Used to be it was done by hill selection. They would find a hill of Beauregard or whatever, or Hernandez before that, Puerto Rico before that. They'd keep the prettiest hills. They would slice them, make sure there's no mutations. They would bed those, and then they would grow out the crop the subsequent year. So you weren't controlling virus, but you were selecting for the best of the best each year. Around the late 1990s, Dr. Labonte and Dr. Chris Clark went to China. They saw that they were doing a bunch of meristem tip culture there. They saw the benefit of clean material, and so when they got back, we immediately started transitioning to this. We've been doing this for about 25 years. 15 years, like I said, for the last 10 years, we've really moved into the plant sale aspect of it as well. That took a little bit longer because we had to wait for growers to buy into having their greenhouses on farm as well, because that's a completely different, our growers are already growing seed, growing sweet potatoes all summer, and then they have to be brokers in the fall. Now they've added another aspect to their business as well. It's a big ask to say, hey, why don't you add something else? But it does give, the more they can bring on farm, the more security they have. So we're trying to provide every outlet we can to support the sweet potato industry.
Well, I was just contrasting it to standard potatoes where it's the tubers which are the principal propagation mechanism, which is analogous to your roots.
Right.
But we're not cutting fresh potato stems and propagating, other than the tissue culture end of it, which is laboratory based. It's not out in the greenhouse. So you have a lot more multiplication.
Well, I mean, like I said, sweet potato is Donnie Miller's going to talk about it later, but he always says sweet potato is a morning glory. Morning glory is a weed. It'll grow pretty much anywhere. If you throw one of these plants on the ground, it'll grow. I'm sure there's vines that my kids pulled out from under the tables this week just because something hit the floor and rooted. So it's easy to grow with sweet potato. It's hard to grow it well.